are we going to put the system onto Vodacom's insurance, or do we have to do a separate insurance that links to your insurance?
Yeah. Sorry, Neil, do you want me to do
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Okay. So typically, if we're looking at the PPA agreement, Anthony, the insurance portion resides with you as the owner of the asset. So for us, our site, there's a distinction between the site and the facility, where the site is what we provide for you to install the facility. So insurance related to the facility would be for you, and the site is insured by us.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
We just, sorry, coming on the PPA side, we obviously prefer to try and keep the insurance with the same insurer to avoid having gaps. But, if you've got two different insurers, then it's nice for them to sort of start pointing fingers to each other if something goes wrong. So we always prefer to have both the building and the PV insurance with the same insurer, if possible. Otherwise, we just want to do a little bit of a gap analysis on the two policies just to make sure that there aren't, gaps between the two where you can potentially have an issue with, both insurers trying to disclaim or, disclaim.
Well, I think that's important. So I think what we should do is actually have a sit down with Zurich and just find out if we can't align our policy with theirs, and then make sure if they're going to be the underwriter, it's fine as long as we're on the same page.
Yeah. So I think, I never actually thought it from the angle that you are seeing it from. So the requirements from the insurers are actually more from how they're insuring our facilities. So obviously we're sitting with a data center which has $1 billion plus rands of kit in it. If your solar system burns the site down, obviously it's on their shoulders. So that's actually the context from where this tick sheet comes from. But I think from your perspective, I hear you, and I think that's an item that we need to address with our insurers, I think. But I suppose also just to jump in here and perhaps preempting a lot of the discussion, and Chris can come in. We've actually developed a Vodacom PPA, which we will be sending through to yourselves, which is basically based on the industry standards in terms of a PPA, and that will be our PPA going forward for all these solar installations that we are currently busy with.
Okay.
So,
when you
Chris, do you
have a
think
chance, if you can send it to us, and then we can have a look through it as well.
I'm actually expecting the final version today. There was just a couple of things with termination clauses that we had to finalize, for buyer default and seller default termination. So I'm expecting that today, and then we'll get it through to you as soon as possible. Neil, do you think we just need to facilitate that meeting with the insurers through Ismail?
Yeah, we'll definitely invite Ismail to that meeting.
Okay.
But I think before we get into before we have that meeting, I think, Chris, it'll probably be good to get the PPA through to CPA so that they can work through it, because that might raise other discussion points with the insurer.
Yeah.
So Chris, do you think? So you say you'll have the final version today. I suppose we must just get it into inverted commas a clean format, where we remove, any of the other details that CPA shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah, and that's fine, Neil. So that's how we actually did it. So it's like a generic document. And then everything gets attached as annexures. So yes, as soon as I have it, we'll get it through to them.
Perfect.
Okay. Then on the topic of remote monitoring, so we've got two platforms that are going to be running at the same time. We've got the Huawei Fusion platform, and then we've also got a quantum QoS software, which has been developed for our PPAs, which the Broadreach has developed, but we'll be using it on this as well.
Yeah, so the quantum it's a specialized C&I or renewable energy, particularly solar PV piece of monitoring software. What we like about it is it can pull data from various different sources and different types of inverters, and it's fairly customizable, so we can put together a dashboard
specific to Vodacon's requirements, depending on what data you'd like to have available easily. It's a sort of an overlay on the various data sources that you'd have from a PV system. It also includes satellite irradiation data for every site, so we can monitor the performance of each site relative to irradiation conditions, etc., and provide that functionality.
Is that relatively open source in the sense that, we've actually got an energy monitoring platform within our, where we monitor all our data centers? Would we be able to pull in that information into that platform?
I think yes. So it's fairly. Sorry, I'm not. My background is more sort of legal financial. My understanding is that it has the ability to pull in data from various sources. Certainly, from a technical point of view, you can pull in data from inverters, from weather stations, etc. And I think it should have the ability to also pull in consumption data from each site. So that you could then have your production and consumption side by side on one portal. We'll make sure of that and get back to you.
So I actually wanted to ask the same question. So essentially, I think the Huawei system does have a programmable API where we can...
It does, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is the one side, and then on your side, possibly also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, let's get back to...
All these discussion points and your responses, would you, after today's session, once you've got all the necessary info, you'll send it through to us?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to clean it up and then I'll send it through to you because it's got like 3 different colors on it. And yeah,
so we've been bouncing...
You've been bouncing it around, so I'll clean it up first and then I'll send it off to you.
You decide who gave the more correct answer. All right, great.
And then, so in terms of the layouts and the drawings, yes, those will be provided in different revisions. Obviously, we've started on the drawing, on the layouts, trenching, those sort of things. So we're on the revision 1 drawings currently. Once the revision 1 drawings have been completed, we'll submit it as revision 1. And as things change, we'll just change the revisions to make sure that everything is correct. Till eventually there'll be an as-built drawing.
Yeah, I think for now we can keep it conceptual, obviously until the PPA is inside and whatnot. Before you're putting too much effort into this whole thing, let's get the PPA signed that at least that's the project's guaranteed on your side and you're not at risk. Cool.
Perfect. And then on the electrical connection, we're doing an LV connection anyway, so we will be connected to the LV side of the transformer. So I don't foresee any issues with connecting to the LV side.
So obviously then you distributing it at, yeah, okay.
That LV 400 volt.
Yeah, all right, perfect. And it'll be at the transformers themselves, right? On the LV side, actually at the transformers.
It'll be at the main breaker basically, just after the main breaker.
Yeah, so we just have a look. So most of all 3 sites, so it's Roslyn, Silverton, but yeah, all 3 sites, you'll actually see we've got 2 output breakers from the transformer. We actually feed an A feed and a B feed, which run in separate trenches into our facilities. But I'm sure that shouldn't be a problem. We just find a tie-in point at the transformer. Upstream of those 2 breakers then.
Well, look, it shouldn't be a problem. Technically, we can connect to either one because it's the same supply point.
Yeah, but we might be switching off a supply when we're doing maintenance or an upgrade. So that A supply might be dead and you might be connected to the A supply, for example, and then all those on the B side. So
I basically need to give two interlocked supplies so that if you switch off A, my change of interlocking will then supply the power to B.
Well, no, I think all we need to do is just tie upstream of the 2 output breakers.
Okay, I understand.
So exactly what you were proposing earlier. We was just, obviously, when you get to that level of detail, just physically look at where in the transformer we can physically tie you in.
Okay.
I just a note, Neil, all the transformers are full, so we'll need a kiosk next to the transformer for your equipment.
Okay.
Good point.
Just writing it down. Okay. Then in terms of health and safety, clearly, I mean, we do comply with Vodacom's health and safety. With regards to the extras, the cat ladders, the hand railings, anchor points, obviously the anchor points we will have to put in because we'll have to work on the roof. But the other things like cat ladders and for the roof access, hand railings, those sort of things haven't been factored into our costing. Purely because it was a tender and obviously, you know, lowest price wins on most of these. So to try to finance in hand railings, cat ladders, those sort of things is not always possible on a PPA. Especially if we want to do a 10-year PPA that needs to come in under the rate of what you're paying for electricity.
Yeah, so I think it is a requirement. So I think if you could then look at your commercials with that included.
Okay.
And let's see where it takes us. That's fine. Look, at the end of the day, we have to comply with the HSE rules. So we'll have to have cat ladders and hand railings.
Okay. Number 6, in terms of maintenance, walkways on the roof. Look, most of the time we have, we won't put in walkways per se, but most of the time what we have is cable trays which are covered, which most of our guys walk on anyway. So we don't cost in the walkways on the roof, but we do have access through the modules through let's say cable ladders and cable trays on the roof.
Yeah, I don't think that principally should be an issue unless you can come in here to walk on the roofs themselves. One of the concerns, not with your solution, but what we have seen from other suppliers that we've actually implemented a couple of years back, is there were no walkways, for example, in between the panels. So there's just no way to clean those panels, yes. Which is crazy, you know.
No, we have to do the maintenance on it, so we've definitely got walkways between the panels, or at least ways between the panels, in order to do the maintenance.
Yeah, so again, that ties heavily back to the health and safety discussion. So as long as you're able to do it in a very safe manner,
of course,
you know, the other solution, they were putting Lilo type effects where they glided themselves over the panels. It was crazy stuff. So we must just make sure, obviously, it's best industry standards when it comes to maintenance.
And I'm assuming that that will also have the associate full arrest system in place.
Is that, I assume that's got to do with your anchor point that we will put in for the health and safety?
Yeah, so you got the anchor points, and then I'm assuming, if there's no way to transition between those points, then you'll probably have to run a horizontal safety line as a full arrest system.
Correct.
Yeah, Anthony, and just one more thing. We got chroma deck sheeting, so no walking on the sheeting, direct on the sheeting, you know. It might create leaks for us later. So wherever the guys walk, there should be some additional support on the roof.
Okay, so you put but it's clip lock sheeting, if I'm not mistaken. Eh?
Yeah, clip lock, yeah, chroma deck, yeah.
Yeah, because we for the installation itself, we're gonna have to walk on the roof. There's no other way to do it.
I suppose, Anesh, you know better, but I mean, when they built the roof, they walked on the roof, right? But I think from a maintenance where it's going to be more traffic, I suppose there we actually need, I suppose, those sort of walkways on which the maintenance guys will walk on, right?
Yeah, you need some sort of walkway, yeah. Okay, nobody actually walked on a walkway, I mean on the roof. They rolled it out from the truck direct onto the roof and then just basically clipped it in, into position.
So I suppose, Anthony, you guys would know better. I mean, you worked on these roofs before. How do you typically do the installation then?
No, we walk on the roof. I mean, we haven't had issues of walking on roofs and having leaking issues. Provided the roof's in a half decent condition, I mean, we don't actually have issues with walking on the roof and then having any issues afterwards.
Nesh, can you maybe then also just take that up with, I'm not sure who, as to who built the, Roslyn, for example, and see if that's going to be potentially be an issue or not.
Yeah, it was global roofing. Okay, I'll ask them about it.
But I don't think, I can't see it, if it's just for the installation part, I can't see it being too much of an issue. I think the issue more comes where there's more traffic on it for regular maintenance and what that might become an issue.
I mean, your regular access is going to be every couple of months for cleaning, really. So I mean, you're probably looking at, I mean, depending on site conditions, but probably looking at sort of once every 2 months. People will need to move along there to clean the panels, and I mean, in the maintenance schedule, which we can get to later in the discussion, but that's typically every 6 months. There's a maintenance that needs to be done, but that's more on the inverters, etc. But it's so the access onto the roof during maintenance is no worse or more than during cleaning.
Yeah. I mean, even so, I mean, even when we're doing the maintenance, we're talking about maybe 5-6 guys on site that are walking on one point for not even 2 minutes while they're doing the cleaning. It's not like we've got 50 guys up on a roof doing cleaning.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, if that's sort of the norm and you haven't encountered any issues to date, so I think, Anesh, if you can maybe just phone the suppliers of the roofs and just see if they would have any issues with it. But it sounds like it shouldn't be an issue in principle.
Yeah, no, okay.
All right, so we'll just confirm that for you.
Yeah. To move on in terms of the municipal submissions, that is something that we will do before commencing with any of the installations. So I know Durban has a application. City Power has one as well. Finding someone to actually capture the paperwork is a different story, but they do have an application process. So that is something that we do and will be done before we commence.
Anthony, we've got a relationship with Paul Vermeulen from City Power, so I don't know if you guys have...
Oh, that will be fantastic if you've got somebody inside that can actually help us out.
So they are aware of our current progress on that from a City Power point of view. But I do, and I also know that they require a grid study.
Yeah, so they recently had this thing where they realized that NRS 097, I think it is, requires a grid study for anything over 350 kilowatts. So we have had that on other sites in Joburg. They had somebody internal who did it, but it does cause not a bit of a delay, but I mean, they need to get, their people in to go and do that.
Yeah, I think it's Paul and Gavin. Gavin is the other guy. Gavin, yeah.
Dealt with Paul, and then guy who actually came out to site, I can get his name. Anyway.
I think it's the same all over, because I know the City of Cape Town also needs a grid study for anything over 350 kilowatt as well. But they obviously do that themselves.
Okay, but that is on you guys to actually do all of those applications and grid studies. And then just coming back to the roof, there's also the structural roof assessment portion. For the weight of the solar panels added to that. But I think, Anesh will be able to provide you all of the details for these roofs, and then you guys can proceed with that.
Yeah.
Of course, we will have to do a structural analysis anyway.
Is that part of your contract? Is that do you perform that service?
Contract, yes. That's part of our contract.
Okay.
Just continue. And then on the billing side, we will install utility grade billing meters anyway. It will either be Ulster or Landis and Gear. It's just that our billing complies with the SANS regulations.
Yeah.
So billing won't be done from the portals. Billing will be done from the meters.
That's a good point, actually, just for monitoring purposes regarding the consumption data. If you're using one of those meters, you can definitely pull data from those meters from a consumption point of view.
Yeah.
So if you've got similar meters,
Yeah, so we actually make use of Landis and Gear as well.
yeah,
So if you guys can use that, then that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
you'll be able to get that data then on our portal.
Yeah, what was the other meter that you mentioned?
It's either the Ulster or the Landis and Gear. Ulster is the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you,
Why don't
as I
we
said,
take-
we've actually developed an in-house platform within Vodacom, which actually then pulls through all the Landis and Gear meters. We've got a couple of thousand of them around that we pull into a platform. So if we can stick with that, it would be great.
Yeah, we might just make sure that we can pull the data both ways into one of our platforms and into your platform still. So
Normally those meters don't cater for dual communication.
dual communication and which
Look-
yeah.
Yeah. So what we would also do, at all our data centers, we actually got full sub-metering as well. So we actually make use of Schneider's suite of metering hardware. So we also pull that into a platform called PME. It's a Schneider PME, Power Monitoring Expert, which we would then probably also meter this, the energy production from you guys, so we can then also, what would be nice, we can actually compare if there's any sort of discrepancy in the metering.
So what you can do then is you can just free issue us the meter. We'll build it into our distribution cabinets, and then you can obviously just pull the data out of that.
That's what we're doing on our side, Neil. We're also putting a check meter. Yeah.
Okay, great. Cool.
Okay, and then on the O&M, we'll send you through an O&M manual of what we do. But typically there's 2 maintenance sessions a year for cleaning, 2, so 2 big ones, 2 small ones. So it's 2 cleans and 2 checks basically a year.
The cleaning can be a little bit site specific. So I mean, if some of the sites need more regular cleaning, we obviously will adjust to that. But from
our standard is twice a year currently.
So you alternate it. So basically, then every 4 months, so you're clean.
Every 3 months we're on site, so it's a cleaner check, a cleaner check.
Okay, perfect.
So from our side, do you need like water points closer, or do you have long hoses to go on the roof?
I've got long hoses, but I've also got, if need be, we will just take those 25-liter drums with us up onto the roof, if need be, with the water and the high pressure hose.
Okay.
If there's no water close by.
Yeah, no, okay, we just need long hoses, I think.
Yeah. But we've got the long hoses also, that's not an issue.
Okay.
On the subcontractors, currently the only subcontractor we're going to have is Caracal, and they're doing the ground-mounted structure. But in terms of the roof work and the electrical infrastructure, it's all in-house.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a loaded question, that one. So, look, I don't know if you've ever dealt with Vodacom before. Our health and safety, goes to the nth degree. And everybody says, no, we've dealt with difficult customers before, but Vodacom really does becomes a headache for a lot of our suppliers to get vetted. So there's a very formal process that gets when you get onboarded through our supply chain management. You go through a NOSA vetting, and that NOSA vetting is actually customized specifically to Vodacom, and it becomes very onerous. And one of the issues that we do have is if you got more than 2 tiers of contracting. So I'm encouraged by what you've just mentioned, that it's going to be yourself. So we're going to contract directly with CPA, I assume, and then you would then subcontract only to one other subcontractor.
Yeah.
So that subcontractor won't be subcontracting any further, right?
No, they won't be subcontracting any further now.
Right. So then that's going to solve and make that challenge a lot easier then.
Neil, on our side, we've had an engagement with Vodacom Health and Safety. We've actually set up a meeting for next week to get clarification.
Will you invite us to that one, Chris?
So I will invite you guys to that so that we can get some clarity on that one. Greenwave is also going to be in that one. So I think we then just, you know, if we finalize that, we can just apply it into this project as well.
Yeah. But it sounds like it's not going to be too much of a challenge because it's not lots of subcontracting. Yeah.
So in terms of the how they what we asked them to go and do some homework on their side from health and safety perspective, and if need be, get a legal opinion, because typically we are contracting with them to procure energy. We are not contracting them to construct on our behalf, because that's all, you know, the way how it's structured. So they need to do a little bit of homework on their side and then come back with that opinion for us next week, Thursday.
Yeah, look, Chris.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how you spin it to health and safety. You know, it comes down to losing control. You know, the health and safety guys feel that if you're doing more than two-tier contracting, in other words, you've got a third level in the contracting, it becomes too difficult to manage from a health and safety perspective. So that's look, it can be done. We've actually done it on some of our, obviously when you're doing a new build, when you're building a new data center, I mean, there you're doing multiple subcontracting, you know, it's a normal construction site. So we do get concessions on that. But all I think the reason for the question was just to understand how tricky it was going to be to get our NOSA vetting with this project.
We've had a little. We can have a discussion offline. I'll actually have a discussion with you offline, Neil, because now it's the financial guys from the IFRS perspectives are also now involved. But I'll have that offline with you.
All right, perfect, cool. Okay.
And then clearing of the vegetation. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, because I'm not a tree expert, so and neither are my electrical engineers, so we actually don't know what is there on site that is protected and which is not protected. You know, we go to site and we see a tree that's in the way, we chop it down.
Yeah,
Nish, how do we typically handle that?
Normally we also just grade it down, you know, like Roslyn was graded down, but Silverton has got quite a big bush, you know.
So,
and yeah.
Was there? Is Silverton a site that Vodacom developed itself? I mean, was it?
Yeah. So where the building stands at the moment, the data center that was developed by us.
Yeah.
And then we purchased the adjacent property.
Okay.
Which is currently just the open felt.
Okay.
That hasn't been developed. It's owned by Vodacom, obviously, but the intent, we wanted to expand our data center into that property, but we never did.
Right.
So,
just a quick question: you've combined this urban into one, right?
No, we haven't actually. It's a good point that you're raising now.
Got to be careful of that, Anthony.
Because technically we cannot distribute across
urban.
Across the boundary line.
From a national legislation point of view, that would be regarded as wheeling, so that might complicate a little bit of things, Anthony. We're going to need to look at the design.
No.
It's an interesting question. I've never thought of that. No, you might have a point, actually. You might have a point.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest concern is that you would cause a ring, and that is what the biggest concern is with regards to that crossing of boundaries. We've just had a discussion with the COJ now as well. They've shared their latest bylaws, there's nothing prohibitive within their bylaws that
Yeah.
we are seeing there. And in terms of the regulations, I couldn't find anything there, that sort of prohibits that.
Yeah.
Well, specifically in the new regulations that was put out there and gazetted, they're talking about. They're even talking about, properties next to each other in that one as well. So yeah, but yes, we need to investigate that.
Yeah, we'll double
Go double check it.
that. I know it used to be the position, but they've obviously increased your generation license capacity, and you used to, in order to be able to transmit from one place to another, you either had to have a generation or a distribution license. Anyway, sorry, I'll double check on that too.
So we'll have to just double check on that because they want to get into trouble.
Yeah, what are the other options? We have to notoriously tie the properties or consolidate.
Yeah, I
Gee,
think
that's
Consolidate.
yes, that's a long-term project there.
It took a long while for the campus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a span in the works. I mean, you could always phase the projects, do the roof-mounted installation now, and then when the notoriously tie comes through, then you can. But I mean, that's 12, 18 plus months, I think.
Let us have a look at it.
All right.
I just want to make 100% sure again of what the national regulations etc. are on
the legal ramifications are.
Yeah, it used to be definitely that you couldn't, effectively export electricity from one earth to another. But obviously there have been a number of changes recently. And I know like with much larger scale plants, you can build your own overhead line. You need to get permissions, etc., to do that. And so you can do it. It is just a licensing process that you need to go through. I just want to check how onerous that process would be.
Yeah, let me find out if we consolidate the stands, more or less what's the time frame on that.
Yeah, so let's do this. So we'll take that back to see what the price is, and we'll obviously action that if that is a requirement.
Yeah.
But obviously that's, it's not the ideal scenario because it is going to take a lengthy period of time. So if you guys can then also investigate it from your side.
Then,
yeah. All right, perfect.
Yeah, and are they all two earthen, or obviously the other two are one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only Silverton.
It's only Silverton.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we come to the real question is if our PPA rate is more expensive than the council rate. Now, judging by the bills we've got, we are more than the council rate.
Yeah, so the challenge, maybe just give context. So, OPEX is obviously a big issue, and obviously for yourselves, but also with us. And there's a very strict guidance that Vodafone push upon us that there must be a 0% increase on any operating expenses. So what we don't want to now do is to go back to the council, go back to the regions, because look, each of these sites sit within a Vodacom region, and if the rate is higher, then it comes off of their OPEX line item, and then they're going to say, well, we've implemented a project and now it's actually costing more money. Whereas, yes, over the full 10 years, I get it, it's going to be cheaper for Vodacom, but in that financial year, it actually hits you in the OPEX line item, and it's going to hurt us. So if we are in that case on one or two of the sites, what we could perhaps look at, and you guys can perhaps look at, is reducing the PPA rate for year one or year two, year one and year two, for example.
Yeah.
But then we allow you an annual escalation, where currently it's a 0% escalation. So you basically just rework the model slightly.
We're happy to do that. I mean, we can do any sort of combination of escalations, etc.
We can do escalation and time, basically, because
Yeah. So I mean, we could do something where we say first year is a certain price, second year is a certain price, and then from the third year onwards it's flat. Or we can have a small escalation throughout, etc. I just, from our perspective, I guess it's what we would like to understand is, what are the constraints on your side? It sounds to me like you can't, if it's going to be more than whatever you're paying to the municipality or, at the start, then that's going to be problematic. And I think we can probably work with that. If there are no escalations allowed either, but that doesn't sound to me like it's the case. It sounds to me like you can have some escalations.
Yeah, look, I think what would be ideal, because there is sort of the thinking within Vodacom is what we would like with these projects is to have a zero escalation, so that it helps Vodacom to, over a 10-year period, to budget more accurately. One of the big challenges with Eskom is that you just never know what your bill's going to be in the next couple of years. It makes budgeting very difficult. So I think if you guys can rework a model that in year one, it's such that we never pay more than what we are currently, or that we are paying to the council, and then as soon as we're out of that bracket, that is a 0% escalation.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. I mean, obviously, just to note, I mean, if we were to quote sort of escalations, we would be happy to do it on a basis where we said there are fixed escalations, but the price can never be more than what you're paying to the council. So I mean, from a budgeting perspective, that could give you this. I'm just sort of mentioning alternatives in terms of how to structure it. So that would give you your certainty from a budgeting point of view, and hopefully meet those requirements. Or otherwise, as you say, if there's escalations in the first couple of years and then it's flat from there, that's another option to look at.
Adam, can you provide us with a couple of options on that one? Can you rework the models for us a little bit?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I mean, so I think this is one of the points we just wanted to sort of discuss. I mean, we can do anything from, we could make it a 5-year PPA, but it then almost certainly is not going to be, at a rate which is going to beat your municipal cost. 10 years, I think we can get there. Possibly it's going to be a bit challenging in the first couple of years, but we can address that. But if your main concern is having electricity at a cost less than what you are paying to the municipality, and you want certainty in terms of your budgeting, a 20-year PPA does become quite a long-term commitment. So I don't know if the issue around 20 years from Vodacom's point of view is maybe you have a policy that you don't sign for, contract for that long. But obviously, on a 20-year contract, that would give us the ability to give you the lowest possible electricity price from a PPA point of view.
Yeah, look, I don't think the 20-year. I think Vodacom's sort of better down on the 10-year. And I think we must work within that parameter. I think.
No,
but
that's fine.
I think to Chris's point, maybe if you can come back to us with, okay, you've currently given us the one option, which is a flat rate for it. Maybe come up with a stepped function where year 1 and 2 it's sort of flatter, then it escalates at 1% a year for the next following 8 years or whatever. Just come with a couple of options that we can look at the business model and see which one is more favorable to us.
Yeah, so we can assist with those business models as well. In terms of quantifying savings and so on. And if we can get your consumption data, then we can run those business cases and produce them for you. And I guess what our goal would be to try and find a tariff scale which is going to meet your requirements, and then we'll give you some options, and we'll calibrate them so that they give you the same savings. It'll just be on a different profile. If we do escalations, there's maybe going to be a bit more savings initially and less later, versus obviously a zero escalation is less savings up front and more later.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think that's one of what on the commercial items, number one is because you obviously got the sophisticated modeling packages and whatnot, and we don't. But what we can do is we can send through your load profiles for each of the sites through to you, and then you got something to work with.
Yeah.
If I can just ask, what would be ideal for you? What load profile?
Ideal would be hourly consumption data in kilowatt hours for each site if there is a single metering point which meters the consumption at the site. Anthony, maybe we can have a discussion, but I'm assuming there's a single tie-in point that we're talking
There's
about.
a single
here.
tie-in point that then gets split, obviously. But
if we can, if we can understand the full load of what, where we're tying in, so in other words, what the solar will be offsetting, then that's really the data that we need.
And because obviously the council has separate rates, winter rates and summer rates.
We'll factor all of that in. We'll give you also a calculation of, what is the weighted average cost that you're paying to the council across all those time brackets. And then obviously we'll calibrate our PPA to make sure that we're charging you less than that. I don't want to introduce too much complexity into it, but the other alternative is to look at also a sort of tiered tariff structure in where we can tier our tariffs per peak, off-peak and standard, but that does become a little bit sort of complex from a...
No, let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
And so what we can do is, look, as I said, we're measuring half hourly our data real time. So would 1 month of data be sufficient for you then?
Ideally a year, because we'd like to capture any seasonal variability. If we're talking about data centers, etc., I'm assuming the load is pretty constant. And from what I could see from the utility bills that you sent through, it does look pretty flat throughout the year. So Anthony has shared data for all 3 sites already for a couple of months. I think Anthony, you've got about 5 months worth of data there. Ideally a year, just to sort of be sure that we're capturing any variability that might be there, but otherwise happy to use a lesser period and extrapolate from that.
No, we can most certainly look. The information's there, just the file gets rather big, but that's not a insurmountable challenge. So that's fine. Let us get 12-month data for you, and we can send it through.
So the other reason that I would say 12 months as well is that I understand that there's sort of you've got maintenance time periods throughout the year where the sites may be using less power because of sort of scheduled maintenance on site. So obviously a year's worth of data will give us, help us to understand what does that variability look like in the typical year.
Yeah, so we won't, even during maintenance, as a data center, it runs 24/7, 365. There's no downtime. The only time where it is obviously when there's a council power failure or load shedding and we're running on diesel gen. That's literally the only time where our load will decrease.
Yeah.
And the information do you want kilowatt hours or do you want kVA, kilowatts?
If you'd like us to do a calculation also for anticipated demand charge savings, I must look at the tariffs that you're on if they're demand.
I think kilowatt hours should be sufficient for our side. Just to make sure that our rates match and our generation matches.
If you want us to add in the kVA savings to assist the business case, we can do that. But for our purposes, obviously what we're focusing on is the kilowatt hours.
Yeah, so I think from the business case, because we actually want to use, the modeling that you're able to do with your packages is actually to show the full benefits to Vodacom.
Yeah.
So then let's give you the 3 readings, which is kilowatt hours, kVA, and kilowatts.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, then this is Silverton, due to security concerns, we must do option B. I don't know if you want us to finance this within our PPA. Building a wall and trying to finance that wall within a PPA costing and then trying to get the rate under your current so that your OPEX cost doesn't increase. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do.
Well, I suppose if let's say it's Silverton for this option B, as we're calling it, maybe again, you can in years one, in the early years, you can keep it at the same or lower than what the council rate is, but then you have a, say, 5% escalation year on year, for example. That you might get into your, make the business case work for yourselves. Or do you think it's completely out of sync?
It all depends on what it's going to cost and what sort of wall you want. No,
Yeah, so it's just a typical brick wall, face brick wall, 2 meter.
face brick wall or block wall or...
It doesn't really matter.
There's no spec for the wall. That's what I'm trying to get at. As long as
The only
meters
spec
up.
must be 2 meters. But I don't know. Maybe keep quiet. Anesh? Jan?
Yeah, we put face brick wall at Roslyn, so it doesn't have to be face brick. I don't think we're looking at aesthetics, eh?
Okay.
Yeah, we're not
Yeah,
worried
but
about the aesthetics. It's just an industrial area.
Yeah, industrial. Yeah.
And the plans for this wall, obviously we will have to get a draftsman or architect or somebody in to draw this in so we can submit for plan submission.
Yeah, so we'll do the plan submission for you.
Okay.
In fact, I've already initiated that on our side. So Anesh is running with that at the moment. So we'll get the council approval for that.
Now on this plan, obviously you guys are speccing a wall. Would you let us know what type of wall it is? Give us a quote, yeah. We're not builders, so. I mean, whatever wall you guys are submitting to the council for approval, if you can let us know, then we can obviously start quoting on our side or start getting the quotes together for that particular type of wall. No, it's not. They're contracting direct with us. As long as they don't contract to Caracal.
Yeah, correct.
I think
So clarify, exactly to Anthony's point, you're allowed to have as many contractors contracting to you. You just can't have your subcontractors subcontracting.
I think to short circuit this whole discussion, see if it's viable or not. Let us get a quote in from one of the contractors that we typically use. We normally deal a lot with contractors, and then we can give you a budget price through which you can try and fit into your model. If that works, we can then refine it further.
Yep. Good idea, yeah. Okay, then Mount Edgecombe for option B. What is the timeline for wanting to expand the data center?
Yeah, how long's a piece of string? That's always an incredibly difficult. I get asked by my senior leadership as well to give them a 5-year forecast, and I tell you, it all depends. I mean, like this. I mean, we've just gone through lockdown where our data throughput increased by 130%, and then there's big growth. And next year you might find there's not that great growth, and then the capex decreases, and there's less equipment installed. It's almost an impossibility to predict that. But the current indications are that within 2 years we will be expanding Mount Edgecombe.
Okay, so then look.
So remember, it's not the full. So let's just clarify. So it's only that one portion which is on the northwestern side of the building. So from the ground perspective, the ground-based installation, it's only the northwestern side. That's on the western side is still available for the ground-based installation.
Okay, then I will redo the design and the layout. In terms of, I mean, I know it's a 2-year plan, but I assume that you have got the building plans already.
No.
No. Is it going to look the same as the current building, or?
Yeah, it's a physical extension of the existing building.
Okay, so I can basically mirror that building onto the northwest of it, fill the area and go, okay, this is sort of what you're looking at.
Well, no, I think a part of this exercise that you're doing, I think let's just remove that portion of
Okay, remove it.
move it. I think if we do expand the building in say 2 years, then obviously then what we will do, we'll approach you to do the roof base for that extension as well.
Because our other option was obviously to put it in, obviously, right? And when you do the extension, was to remove the modules from the ground mounted side and put it onto the roof.
That's an option. That's not I mean, technically that's not a big thing, right?
It's labor and some cabling and some mounting structure, technically. Look, there is a cost implication to it, obviously the labor and the cabling and the mounting structure. But I mean, let's say you're doing it 5 years down the road or 4 years down the road, you might find out that your energy saving through the last 4 years outweighs what you're going to pay for the changes.
I think that's going to be minimal, minimal costs involved there if you look at it in Neil. Maybe that's something you can include in your project cost.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not talking a whole lot of money.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of looking at it. Jan, what do you think? That we continue with what's been proposed there on the northwestern side. Yeah. And then if we do the expansion of the building, then we just, part of the expansion costs, we just lump that in and we pay CPA to move it for us up onto the roof.
Yeah, my costs are going to be a fraction of what your data center extension costs are going to be.
We bought very cheap.
Yeah. It's only going to cost us a couple $100,000.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Okay. So I think that's a good solution. Let's keep it like that. So let's keep so then you don't have to do as option B. Let's keep it the way it is now.
Okay.
Cool.
Just writing that down. Okay, and then you had a thing about the maintenance plan. It was just so I used the same templates as what you did with for the campus. So there was a maintenance built in on the cash option over there. So you can ignore that part of the 24-month maintenance program.
So yeah, so yeah, we should just correct that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had clarity on the buyer curtailment during outages. So I mean, it's the same as our load shedding. So I mean, we allow for 1.5% losses due to load shedding and maintenance every year.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify exactly what outages we're talking about in point 6. So sorry, that's related to my earlier question, which was whether I assumed that it was related to periods during the year where you might have to do maintenance or have portions of the facility, shut down or using less power. Are you talking about our maintenance?
No. So these, Adam, this actually comes out of previous discussions that we had with the big RFP. So I think everybody then basically came back to say that for buyer curtailment they will allow a 1% curtailment for shutdowns. Neil and them have confirmed now that they don't really would have that facility shut down. But for scheduled or unscheduled, that there is an allowance for 1% curtailment.
Yeah. So we've got, well, we actually, I mean, between load shedding and curtailment, we do have an allowance built into our model.
The load shedding is actually a bit of a problem because we were going on the discussion that we actually had in the major RFP, where we sort of agreed going forward that load shedding will be at risk for you guys, except where there's excessive events of load shedding, where the parties then can negotiate in good faith to declare a force majeure.
Yeah. So
Because 1% amounts to around about 30 daylight hours per year, which is very, very low.
No, it is very low. So sorry, I mean, we build in an additional provision on our side. So load shedding, we accept we're taking the risk for. Up to but we, if we can agree that we're taking the risk on our side up to a point, and if for some reason there's a national disaster and load shedding gets out of hand, but it's just a question of where's that point in terms of.
So I think we're saying in good faith here, and that's how it's actually stipulated in the PPA document as well. If you guys will accept that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, this is now where I start to lose you guys. We haven't been in this game yet. So what is 0.6 then exactly, Chris?
Yeah, that's in terms where we cannot take any power. So this is where the deemed energy, type of thing come in. So either for scheduled or unscheduled outages on our side. And I think the way that
on our side. So that's where
on our side
where we stop drawing power.
Yeah.
So, as you were mentioning, there would be, and I might be contradicting what I said a little bit earlier, but, we would, but I'm talking it's very seldom, where we might go on generator, not because of a council outage. We would actually go on generator when we're doing a changeover, and then that's probably a half an hour call it.
Yeah, this is the other point that I just wanted to clarify is obviously if these are all data centers, then you've got backup generators and I'm assuming a UPS type solution as well to ride through any interruption. If that's the case, I mean, then there should be little to no interruption on the solar side in terms of production.
I think Neil, you guys indicated that you didn't want that, huh?
I don't know. Sorry, so I'm going to just check with Anthony on the technical side.
Just repeat again.
So I think Neil previously indicated, and I don't know if they've changed their mind, where when there's an outage on our side, the solar plant actually switches off. It does not come back when the generator starts up.
Yes. So from the site visits we did, right? They said that we were not allowed to tie in with the generator.
Okay.
Right? So we went on that assumption. From our side, obviously, we would always like to tie in with the generator because it gives us constant uptime.
Yeah, no, so we won't tie in below the generator. The generator is sort of our fail-safe for any anomalies. So we would want you to tie up exactly like you proposed up at the transformer on the LV side. Where the only time where we would be running on generator is when there's load shedding or council power failure. That's then obviously our generator will start up. Occasionally, and when I say occasionally, it is literally occasionally. It's probably, I don't know, Nesh, Jan, I'd say half an hour in a year. We might not even do it for that half an hour, where we might just run on generator because we are doing a changeover on our side, but it's very, very, very limited.
Yeah, it's very few.
Yeah, and the monthly testing is also done after hours, so that won't affect the output of your system.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, Jan, sometimes it is done during the day. It depends on which region. But we're talking half an hour a month at max.
Okay. Well, 0.8, we agree with the calculation. It's not like we have a choice really, but we agree with the calculation.
So before we jump to point, I'm actually using you guys because you're busy schooling me on all this stuff now. So 0.6 is where we curtail. So what have we now agreed, Chris?
I mean, it sounds to me, sorry, I'm interrupting, but it sounds to me like there is no real curtailment, given that these are data centers and they need to stay up. The curtailment we're talking about is probably load shedding, if anything, load shedding or council outages.
Is that a separate point now, Chris? Is that 0.7?
That's separate. Yeah. Yeah, so
So-
that's separate. So the biocurtailment, as was said, that was what we've discussed now. So there's an allowance for that for up to 1%, which equals to 30 daylight hours per year. And then
So before you jump off that then, before you got now to 0.7, so are you happy with that, Adam and Anthony?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
so that 1%, we'll never get to that 1%. So it's actually
Yeah.
to your favor.
unless you have a critical failure on your side, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it is
unless
a sort of a safety net there for us.
Yeah, so if your PPA builds in at 1%, then that's fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll leave it in at 1%. Okay, now Chris, point number 7.
Okay, so this is in terms of, this is the previous discussions we had with all three suppliers when we sat down with them, that load shedding on the PPAs going forward, load shedding will be for the risk of the seller, and that we can then, if it comes down to, excessive events of load shedding, we can then negotiate in good faith to declare force majeure.
Yeah.
And that in terms of that, we could potentially, look at options, one of them being to extend the contract like with a month or maybe 2 months or whatever to cater for the losses.
Yeah, we'd be very comfortable with that. Yeah.
So does that mean, so let's assume load shedding continues like it has over the last 5 years. For all those outages that take place, that's factored into your PPA.
Yes.
And if we're saying now, if Eskom fails and Eskom goes offline for 6 months, well, then that's a force majeure scenario.
If we have
Correct.
I don't know, if there's a major accident at Medupi or Kusile or, something to that effect which causes excessive
Well,
load.
let's say we go into state schedule 5 load shedding for the next month or something like that, or 2 months, then we have to go back and say, okay, we've exceeded the load shedding allocation. We're now going to go into a force majeure, and we're going to find out between us how we're going to recover the costs, basically.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you make that allowance known to us?
That allowance is actually in your PPA.
And that's
There was no percentage allowance allowed for that. So it was like at the stage when we negotiated, we're saying that load shedding would be for the seller, and unless there are, as Anthony and everybody was saying, serious events of load shedding where we can then negotiate.
Okay. But we will let you know. We look, our standard one builds in 1.5%. That's what we were saying.
No, it's a bit more than that because we got up to got about 2%.
So our generic PPA doesn't cater for any upper limit on that. So it's just going to be the same as it's stated there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay,
Right.
then so for number 9, once we know what's going to happen with point number 1 and number 2, then we can actually only give you the buyouts, and at what point and the values of the buyouts.
Yeah, so we'll give you a couple of options on the escalations as we discussed earlier. So we'll make it 10 years, but we'll give 2, maybe 3 options on the escalations, and then obviously with those, then we can give a buyout schedule. But we obviously need to know what the escalation, etc. terms are, and then we can provide the buyout numbers.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And then point 10, there will be an SPV. We don't do any of the PPAs through ourselves, so there will be an SPV that will have to be set up for the PPAs.
Yeah, I believe that's a general condition, and it's a requirement from the financing house.
Yeah,
So
typically
exactly. So I mean, we'll pick off the shelf one. We're not going to go and make a new one now. So we've got a few. Adam has a few that are sitting on the shelf over there. So we'll pick one off the shelf.
Yeah, the one thing that we need in this regard, Anthony, is that, you know, if we do this SPV, that we will be contracting with the same SPV going forward. So if we have additional projects that comes online, it will all be against that same SPV.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
But just
Because
explain
now
that to me.
what it entails.
So generally what would happen is when we're doing a PPA, we actually open an SPV for every site or every project. So
Why is that?
Adam can correct
So
me if
are you saying we don't contract, so that PPA is not under CPA then? It's under...
it is not now.
Chris, how does that then tie back to then the health and safety, no surveying?
Yes, and that's that one thing that I needed to discuss with you as well. So we've went through a first iteration. So the contracting company, the SPV, will not be the PC. The principal contractor will be CPA.
Have you started
terms of health
engaging
and
with
safety.
Lance and health and safety about all this?
Yes, so we've sat down with Porsche. We are also bringing in SEM into the meeting on Thursday, and I'll invite you guys to that as well.
Okay.
But that SPV information we need to get through to Kemp as soon as possible, because there's a new vendor creation that needs to happen.
I have been in contact with everybody. We are busy with Kemp for the vendor creation.
And then it's one with a, you know, current tax number, and all of those things are up to date, huh?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So Neil,
That's why I said
we've gone through.
We picked one off the shelf. It's not it's one that's already created.
So Neil, we went through this discussion with Sasha from the legal side of things, and Rubain and in SEM. So in terms of what they are saying, they're saying that the SPV is protecting us as well as the supplier, in terms of, you know, should an entity like CPA go bankrupt and things like that, because there's also, I think, a step-in clause in that regard from the financier.
What's the whole principle behind that? I mean,
So that,
I'm not, yeah, so maybe somebody else can just, Adam, can you maybe assist with that?
yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of reasons for it. One is just to segregate projects from each other. So what you don't want is Vodacom's project sitting in a company with a whole bunch of other clients' projects, and let's say, for example, there's a disaster at another site with another client and it burns down and there's this massive legal claim, and then, you know, then it Vodacom sites and those projects then are effectively available as recourse for claims brought by other sites. So there's a segregation of risk thing that is part of the reason for the SPV. The other reason for it is that, you know, obviously some part of the project cost would be funded by a bank or borrowings, and you want to get the best possible terms for those borrowings. So you'd prefer to have just Vodacom credit risk effectively in the SPV. Yeah, so that you can get the best possible terms on borrowing for these projects. Yeah, and then other reasons that we house it in separate SPVs is because you know, to meet client requirements. If the client, you know, particularly wants their projects kept separate, etc. But I mean, the first two reasons are the main ones.
sounds like when you're buying a house, you end up with this 150-page legal contract from the bank that you need to sign, which you haven't got a freaking clue what you're signing. So it's like one of those things.
Yeah, sadly, that one of the parties in this whole equation to make quite good money out of the whole thing is the lawyers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not us, so it definitely has to be the lawyers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously the last part is the generation and the warranty on the generation, right? So we do two different warranties. We would do a performance-based warranty, and then we also do a warranty against the performance ratio as well that we can do. So obviously the warranties or the guarantees in terms of performance have a lot of things that get built into it in terms of like load shedding and all the rest of it. So even though there is a performance guarantee, they've got a lot of clauses in which take into consideration load shedding and all the rest of it.
This is the standard one that's currently contained in the PPA. So I think this is also the least, from an IFRS 16 perspective, this also, you know, is sort of the least, how do you call it, suspicious one in terms of, you know, is this a pure energy agreement, or, you know, are we dictating any terms to you guys? So I think this is the least suspicious one. So, you know, can we confirm that you agree with this?
Yeah, I think we can work. Usually we would provide what's known as a performance ratio warranty rather than an absolute number of kilowatt hours, because the performance ratio basically says if I've got a 500 kilowatt plant, then on the average year that plant should produce a certain number of kilowatt hours, assuming standard irradiation conditions. And then the performance ratio just says, okay, well, what percentage of that did I meet after adjusting for actual measured irradiation? So it takes into account the fact that not every year your weather patterns are going to be exactly the same. So it provides a little bit of protection, to be honest, from the PPA provider's point of view, because it means we're not providing an implicit guarantee on what the weather is going to be. But if your annual generation warranty is 95% of P90, then you know, I think we can probably take a view internally, you know, on that, and maybe just build in a risk factor to allow for that. Yeah, I mean, 95% of P90, yeah, it would have to be an unusual year, I suppose, to hit that.
Because that is the lower value in any case.
Yeah,
the P90.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, P90 is already the low value, so 95% of that.
Are you, just quickly, are you going to take it on year for year? So let's say we over-generate in year one and under-generate in year two. Are you going to take into consideration year one's over-generation?
No, I mean, you know, we're saying there the minimum annual generation against the yield simulation.
Yeah.
So we should be fine there.
And what degradation factor do you, because I mean, obviously PV systems have a sort of standard 0.5% per year degradation.
I think that was quoted in the submission from you guys' side.
Yeah, 0.7 is what we quoted in the submission.
Okay, so I mean that annual, I just want to double check that we're on the same page. The annual guarantee obviously guarantees a level in year one, and then that level per the natural course of things for solar PV does degrade.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what happens if you don't meet it? Chris?
Well, I'm assuming that we'll see what the consequences are from the PPA that you're sending to us.
Yeah.
I'm imagining.
Yeah. So there is some terms there and in that regard. So you will see that in the document.
I mean, typically what we would see is that if there's lost savings, then we have to kind of make that good. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So it's the difference between what the municipality is charging us and what you guys are charging us, and you would need to cover that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the one last thing is on the bills. I know the one bill was an old bill. Do you have a newer bill that we can do that benchmarking against?
Yeah, so that unfortunately not. So that's the Roslyn site. Anesh has tried to get hold of that, a more recent build, but what happened is the regions converted to prepaid for that site. City of Tshwane forced them to go into prepaid.
So they might actually be on a different tariff scale now.
prepaid on that size
Yeah.
of site.
Massive site for prepaid.
For prepaid, I was like, I mean, prepaid normally stops at 100 amps per phase.
Yeah, I don't know how exactly it works. So that was the last bill that we got.
Sorry, sir. Okay. For us to build the business case, we obviously need to know what tariff you're currently paying to the municipality, because that's going to determine what the savings are. So I just want to understand that that I'm hearing correctly, is that the tariffs that are in those bills from the municipality isn't necessarily or isn't currently the actual amount that's being paid at those
Only
sites.
Roslyn. The other
Only
sites are
Ros-
fine. It's only Roslyn where
Only
we couldn't get the
Roslyn.
latest bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you currently buy electricity for Roslyn?
Sorry?
How do you currently procure the electricity for Roslyn?
Meaning?
Is somebody swiping their credit card to buy?
Yeah,
No,
I don't
we
know how
connect
this
illegally.
I can remember there was a massive project rolled out with the big users about probably about 7-8 years ago with the city of Tshwane, because some of the big users weren't paying them, and then they're getting to arrears, and then city of Tshwane says, well, they can't front the money for that, and so then they started converting us to this prepaid scenario.
Yeah.
So
Anesh, is there any way that we could get more information as to what tariff that prepaid's on?
I'll try.
So-
I'll try. It's with
So
the,
20, sorry, let me just quickly have a look here what 20's tariff scales are.
but just the idea is Silverton is on the same council, right? And the sites are the same.
Yeah, so I'm
Any-
interested that they've moved the one and not the other.
Yeah.
You probably find they kept everybody on the same sort of tariff, but they just changed it to a prepaid. I don't think it's like a residential prepaid.
Okay.
Anesh, maybe see if you can get, even if it's not an actual bill, from what's that lady, Anissa, that you've been dealing with.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
See if they know what tariff it we on.
Yeah. Otherwise,
I mean, when she purchases electricity, what does she get? Does she get a slip or something like that when she purchases the prepaid electricity?
Yeah, she must be paying based on something, Anesh.
so
Yeah.
the non-domestic three-phase prepaid, cheapest, as Anthony says, this is usually applied for
Under them. So
usually applied for small suppliers. I mean, you do,
Under 100 amps.
yeah. Anyway, we can have a look at. I mean, the other alternative is just to get hold of the municipality and find out from them which exact tariff they are that site is on. But we would just want to confirm that and be sure, because otherwise, just to make sure that our business case numbers are correct.
yeah, okay, I'll try
Alright.
with the account number and see if I can draw any info.
Yeah, I've got a time of use prepaid tariff as well. Okay, yeah.
I guess, Anesh, we'll see what more information we can get from Anissa.
Yeah.
I mean, they must be paying based on something. Yes, we might not be getting a official invoice from them, but they must be paying on something.
No, this is interesting. I'm just actually going through Tshwane's tariffs, and even their 11 kV supply, they've got a conventional and then they've got a prepaid alternative, but the tariffs are the same. So it's quite possible you're on the same tariff. I mean, anyway, yeah.
They probably do a prediction of from previous months, what you were consuming, and they predict what you're going to use for that month and then make you pay for that. And then they offset it against the following month if you overpaid.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll clarify that. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Okay.
Alright.
Any other questions from your guys' side?
No, I think it's been a very fruitful engagement.
Yes, yeah.
I think we in alignment for most part. I suppose the big thing on your side is to get hold of that PPA from us. From
Yes,
Chris.
please.
yeah, I will follow up with that in that regard, Neil. Just after this meeting, I'll follow up and just see where we're at. As I said, there were just minor adjustments and then the cleanup to get it ready for signature. So I'll follow up.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Great.
And what I'll do is I'll engage with Kemp and with Adam in the meantime, so we can get the SPV registered as the vendor.
Yeah.
Yeah, the faster you can do that, Anthony, let me tell you, I mean, I'm currently onboarding a supplier now, and the supplier is it's a Vodafone supplier, and we're trying to onboard them now in Vodacom's books, and I tell you, it is a nightmare. So the sooner we can begin with onboarding you guys, the better. You know, because once you onboard it, then there's still the NOSA vetting, which is even
So the
more
NOSA
headache.
vetting for CPA has been completed already. We've done that already.
Good. Okay.
Where?
With NOSA vetting, the NOSA vetting has been done.
When did you do that?
I'll give you the numbers, like more than a month ago. 2 months ago, yeah.
And now you've got me very confused.
So,
Why
so
would
Neil,
you have
they,
done? Yeah.
they're a current supplier to Birdvest for maintenance on the solar system in Century City.
Okay.
Yes,
Makes
Chris.
sense. Yeah.
Must take you out for a dog, Chris.
I'm here, Neil. I'm ready.
Okay. Gee, that's a big hurdle to have overcome, let me tell you.
Yeah, so we've got the registration, we've got the numbers, everything. I actually thought on our side it was the Vodacom supplier registration at the end of it, and then found out no, that's only the NOSA part.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. That's one tick box. That's already ticked. That's great. Well done.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
we'll liaise by email. I'm going to clean this up, our answers up, and send it to you as well. During the course of today.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye.
Perfect.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.